Adam, we've got you registered as Adam Haynes on behalf of Conference of Urban Counties testifying against the bill, correct?
Yes, sir, that's right. Adam
Yeah.
Haynes, Conference of Urban Counties, unfortunately having to testify against the bill as we did in the Senate on the companion of this bill. But Mr. Chairman, as we discussed, and members, not necessarily testifying against the policy, it's a state policy. And if you pass this state policy, as you know, more so than in any other area of the law, counties are your partners, and we're your partners when it comes to public safety. If you pass this law, we will comply. We will follow your orders. I'm here to tell you that if we follow your orders, as has been discussed, and I can answer several questions here, as has been discussed, it will be an expensive order with which to comply, but we will do it. A couple of suggestions that we offered in the Senate that we think would help with this. And first of all, if you strike "and as offered" on page 1's line 12 and 19, Representative Weiner mentioned that in some of her questioning. Right now, it's a back and forth with ICE between the counties. If you leave that in, we have to take what ICE offers to us. What if that says hold the immigrant in jail for 30 days? As offered, we take that. That would be very expensive. So strike that and allow us to negotiate with ICE. Second, as was also discussed, Representative Lowe, and I won't call you the other guy, Chairman Romero. I will say it that way. Tarrant County is above 1 million. This bill does not allow you to participate in the development of the grant program. Yet, in the 6 counties that are above 1 million, we handle 40% of the ICE detainers and ICE encounters. And so you're taking that off the table. We think that's wrong. We should be eligible for the grant. Sure, give the advantage or give points or allow some of the smaller counties to get at the front of the line. That'll be a governor's decision. That'll be, we'll work all that out. But don't prohibit us from participating in it. And then thirdly, if you're not going to allow 1 million counties to participate, then don't make us, at the bottom of the bill, you have us reporting based on the grant information. We have to report. Don't make us report as if we got a grant because we're not eligible for the grant. Those 3 things would be helpful, and then I can answer questions as needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any questions? Representative Weiner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here today, Adam. I wanted to get some clarity around the as offered concern. I mean, what types of things are negotiated in those agreements?
As has been discussed at length, it's the 3 levels. County can say we want to do the warrant model, and ICE can come back and say no, we want you to do this task force model, and there is a little bit of a back and forth there. If you leave as offered, if ICE comes in and says you shall do the task force model, we're stuck. And the expense of that, Mr. Chairman, you ask about that. The expense of that is largely related to the training, but when an officer goes through that training, they also get a supplemental salary. They get a little bit of a bump in pay, so there is that increase. And then the other expense is that when we train that officer that gets to go to South Carolina and then that does the training, when they come back, we keep that officer closer to the jail. It would make sense for us to spend that money on training and then have that person not associated with and near the jail. So it does take them off the beat of, if you will, walking the jail or doing other services in the jail. The same with even if it's just the warrant model, that person that completes the warrant model, their duties become making sure that we've done the ICE checks, and so they're off the beat, if you will, and so there is that expense as well. Did that answer your question, Ms. Winter?
Yeah. Largely, but I think the other question I have is if under those three modes of a 287G, are those fairly formula agreements, or are there other potential terms that might be negotiated?
They are formulaic. I haven't read the formal, but they are outlined and structured. And I mean, it's usually an MOU. My colleague from Tarrant County suggested that it's an MOU between the feds and the county. And so, as you know, we both the feds and the counties pay lawyers by year and by the year, and so they love to get over every dot and tittle, and so they are pretty structured, but there is a system of formulas that go into them. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
I do have a couple questions to follow up to what
Yes,
you
sir.
said. On this issue about taking two issues related to taking the deal and as offered, are you aware of any instances where a sheriff's department has applied for 287G participation, and they applied under either a lesser program, the warrant service officer program, or whatever, and were compelled or were offered an agreement, and, well, they wouldn't be compelled because they're not obligated to, but were requested to sign on to either the jail enforcement model or the task force model against their wishes or against what they had applied to do?
No, sir, I don't. And as you point out, I don't think they would be compelled because it's an agreement.
Okay.
But the other thing, I want to make sure everyone in the room, and I know you know, Mr. Chairman, but make sure everybody understands. ICE is in our jails today because of the work that y'all did 2 sessions ago on Senate Bill 8. We have, now the county may not have an official 287G agreement, but ICE is in our jails today. And if we have an individual that comes into our jail, then we are required to run, and I'll touch on that in just 1 second, but we're required to run. And if we get the flag that person has an ICE detainer, we notify ICE today because of the Senate Bill 8. Now, the county may not have to keep them. The county may not have to hold them, depending on what else relates to that individual. And then just so everybody also is clear, we're mixing a few, whether it's detainer or warrant. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to teach you law, and so, but you know, when the individual comes into our jail, we're going to hold that individual on the underlying state crime. And if that's, you know, we've talked about murder, we've talked about sexual assault, you know, those are long prison sentences. So we're going to hold that individual. If it's capital murder, right now they're not eligible for parole, so they're going to stay. But in the others, as you say, we're going to set parole higher. But we're going to hold that individual in our jail, and they're going to do, if you will, the state time. So I want to make sure we clarify that. And then if they come in for a parole violation on a warrant, we're also going to hold that individual. And if the county has a 287G, we'll notify ICE, and ICE will say, well, we're either coming in 48 hours, or in many instances, ICE will say, we don't have the people to come right now, and so it's up to you. And that's the answer that we get in many of these instances.
So what's been your experience if someone has an underlying charge and say they're brought in on aggravated assault, and then they're booked into the system, it's determined that they have an ICE detainer on them, you notify ICE, are those folks picked up within 24 hours, or is ICE going to say, we'll come pick them up when you're done with your final disposition on the underlying charge?
Usually,
or both, or one or the other.
Usually, it's the former or the latter. They're going, if especially the crime you suggest, then the aggravated assault. You know, we're going to get notified of that from their PSR, their public safety report that we get when somebody comes into the jail. Y'all passed that last session. You're going to modify it this session. I'm pretty sure you're going to modify it this session. And so we get the PSR that says, Bill or Joe or Susie has this pending, is either out on warrant or has this pending charge and is now coming in on a second charge, then their bond is going to be greater. Their bond's going to be harder to get. There are going to be a lot of situations that happen and factors that go into keeping that person in jail. And then whatever they come in for on that second offense, if it's aggravated assault, they're going to serve their state time, especially if it's in one of if it's in a law and order county. That phrase has been kicked around, but they're going to serve state time. And then as they get toward the end of that, we're going to notify ICE, hey, they're getting to the end of their sentence and they have an ICE detainer. And so that's the way that process is going to work.
Excuse me. Well, back to the other point on where you'll be required to participate as the language said. I went back to it a while ago. And as offered. I'm sympathetic to the concern that I don't want the federal government saying, hey, this is the way it is, and you think, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we applied for. We're stuck with this, and if we don't do it, we're out of compliance. But I am also, frankly, I don't know that that's going to happen, and if there's a way to address that, I can, and I'm willing to. But I'm also concerned that some counties say, well, we tried, we negotiated, we didn't like what they sent us, and so King's X, we're out. I don't want counties to use that, or sheriff's department to use that as a excuse to say, well, we attempted to negotiate, we couldn't come to an agreement, and so we've therefore attempted, we've tried, and we're not subject to any equitable remedy or anything else because we couldn't come to an agreement. And I'm not saying the counties would do that, but I'm also not saying that the federal government's going to do what we're concerned about there either. If there's a way to tweak this to where we get proper compliance from both sides, I'm happy to. I hear what you're saying, and I'm happy to work on that. So.
And Mr. Chairman, as you know, your bill already contemplates that. In that section of the bill, it says if the county fails to reach the agreement with ICE, then we've got a series, I think it's 6 criteria that then we have to list out with the comptroller, with the attorney general, and with others to say, here's why we didn't do that. And then as you get down in the 3rd section of the bill, the attorney general can come back at us or on us with investigations. And then I missed the gentleman's name, but the Safe Border, in his testimony, he said, as ICE changes their policy, it's going to allow these folks to stay in county jails. That strikes terror in a county representative's heart, because those are property taxes. And then he said, Florida takes their folks and puts them in state facilities. Boy, you do that, and we'll please change my testimony to for this bill. I mean, if you can save us the taxpayer, the property taxpayers, the expense, and these should be state offenses, and let the state handle those.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Romero.
Thank you, Chairman Spiller. Just a real quick follow-up. So PSR, you mentioned the public safety report.
Yes, sir.
And I was asking the prior speaker, just for the public that's watching, should anybody believe that if you have a prior, egregious crime such as murder, rape, that they can end up in one of our urban county jails and they're not going to be held, that they're going to just be released?
Well, as he said, I can't guarantee you 100%, but if they are released, something has gone wrong, because the PSR, the public safety report that y'all put in last session, is required to be updated within 24 hours, and that's of the original offense. So if the person comes in for a second offense, then the officer, the arresting officer, whether it's a sheriff deputy or the city or whoever, has access to that PSR and pulls up that, hey, this person is out on parole for sexual assault, or They can get parole for murder. I'm not saying that's impossible, but it's becoming less and less frequent. But if they are out on murder, then yes, it would automatically flag your PSR.
And on top of that, you mentioned that you are checking for ICE status now because
Yes.
SB 8 previously. So in the current system that exists today in urban counties, you already are checking for ICE for status. That would be in the record of that individual, whether citizen or non-citizen.
Little bit different. I don't know that the PSR, I don't think, and I'll get back to you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think we have to load into the PSR their ICE status, but we do have to, when we pull that up and pull up the ICE database, it will show, hey, they've got an ICE detainer on file.
So people sometimes talk about, previous warrants, or they have a warrant out for their arrest, or they have some previous crime. Should anyone believe that in Tarrant County or Dallas County or Travis County, people with those kinds of warrants that have had a serious crime, documented or undocumented, are being let out on parole right now after a second egregious offense?
Well, as you know, parole is constitutionally based, and so we have to offer. Bonds are constitutionally based, and so we have to offer a bond. Now, that bond could be $1 million, and there's a limit. It gets into the constitutionality of bonds, but I can't tell you 100% that a person wouldn't be out on parole for a second violent offense, but it's becoming exceedingly rare. But that parole would not be based on whether or not the immigrant is documented or undocumented. That would have no bearing.
Okay, and the point was because of what you said you're already doing today,
Yes, sir.
and you represent urban counties, so this is
Because of the laws that y'all passed 2 sessions, Senate Bill 8. Yes, sir.
okay. Thank you.
Let me, just a quick follow-up. So is it your testimony that the urban counties with populations of over 1 million people are all currently participating and cooperating with ICE insofar as checking their database, executing, seeing if there are detainers on individuals that are brought into those jails in those counties and reporting that properly and timely to ICE currently without necessarily participating in the 287G program?
They may not have a 287, in several of the million-plus counties don't have 287Gs, but they are required to notify based on the parameters of Senate Bill 8 that we have a person in our jail that's got a detainer. And ICE may say they're coming, and increasingly ICE may say we're not coming to get them.
Right. But I don't know, and if you do know, let me know. But I don't know that PSR is inclusive of the information that would be in the ICE federal database. As I told Representative Romero, I think that's correct. I don't think we have to put their ICE status into the PSR. In the PSR contains the state-related crimes, and we have to look at the ICE database when they're either in detention or in our custody to check on their ICE status. Okay. All right. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate your
Chair.
testimony.
Yes, sir.